We've got Michele Goetz, the VP and Principal Analyst from Forrester, and Dimitri Sirota, CEO and co-founder of Big ID. So Michele, take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I want to kind of set the ground for why are we talking about data governance? Why is it important? How is it changing? And how do we have to keep it in tune with our businesses? And what we're finding is 63% of organizations are looking to adopt edge computing. And that's not just from an IoT standpoint anymore in machines. It's really about how do we create connected intelligence to build better value propositions, smarter products, and deeper engagements with our customers. So when we talk about customer intelligence, what we mean by this is how do you execute on a distributed AI system across local, cloud, edge compute environments so that you can create, you can share, you can embed, and harmonize intelligence where humans and machines come together, where humans and humans are going to collaborate and are augmented by intelligence to facilitate that collaboration and engagement. And ultimately, there's also automated types of use cases where machines to machines are sharing their own data and information so that you can enhance those use cases where business outcomes actually happen. What does this look like? Well, we can see, particularly within healthcare and life sciences, how we're using more and more of our personal devices and laptops and tablets, watches, smart health devices to really give us a better understanding about what is the state of our health. If we are having treatment, these machines take on more and more data to help understand and interpret, are we in compliance with our treatment? How are we faring against that treatment plan? And for things like diabetes, you really can have a number of signals coming in that help to understand what your state is, and as well as sharing that information and insight with your physicians and care team so that you can help better balance and manage a chronic disease. Now, that's a great experience, and that's the beginning of connected intelligence. But why else do you do this? It's also got business outcome value on here. And you can really see as we start to digitize our landscape for care and embed intelligence into that and change the way that care is delivered, you can see a lot of opportunity value coming in for not only diabetes, but also asthma, heart failure, chronic kidney disease, COPD. And those are, significant revenue increases of, $51 million that you're making changes. And all of that digitization and intelligence and automation and the ability to collaborate and communicate in an intelligent fashion also helps to reduce costs because you're streamlining your communication, you're streamlining how data is being collected, and you're optimizing the way that you are gathering and distributing intelligence within that ecosystem. Now, those numbers really start to get the attention of the executives. And what we're really finding is that just because of that, data itself is getting the attention of the CEO. And what we're finding is 42% of chief data officers today are actually reporting right into the CEOs. So they're not just these data techie roles, but they're really starting to drive business strategy with a data strategy itself. So now data and business are really tied together so you can be more data driven and more insight driven and achieve those connected outcomes. But let's not, kid ourselves. This is not easy. We've been struggling with data for a long time, whether it was back in the days of the warehouse, whether it was the beginnings of big data, whether we've been moving and pushing to the cloud and capitalizing on data science and artificial intelligence. There's a lot of moving parts, not only in terms of the way that we are evolving and innovating our platform, but our business is evolving and innovating as well. And how do we keep up on this? So what we're finding is that when you actually look at the top priorities around trying to achieve connected intelligence and looking back at our data and analytics capabilities, the top three priorities, it's all about data governance. How do you trust the data that's coming in? How do you provide the right protection for security and privacy today? Whether that is something just as, risk mitigation from security threats, or whether you have to adhere to your regulatory policies, as well as how do you start to organize your information and create a better understanding of your business through domains and master data business objects that help you to better clarify who is a customer, how are customers and products coming together, what is my financial and location capabilities within the organization. So data governance is really kind of setting the stage for data working for our business and for our ambitions in a connected intelligence environment. Now, that's where the priorities are, but there's also a big gap between data governance, enterprise operations, goals, and outcomes. So what do we mean by that? When we look at how data governance is getting executed, very few organizations are really tailoring data governance to what those specific use cases are. So what they'll do is they'll go back and they'll do some profiling and lineage analysis of the data itself, maybe put that up against certain types of standards and definitions, but it tends to be much more focused around what is the state of the data within my database system or the sources themselves, rather than looking at that information, particularly around the things like quality and security, privacy, and master data management, as we saw on the other page, according to what is the use case. Is it customer experience and loyalty? Is it the ability to deliver value through electronic products like your iPhone or an Echo device? Is it to automate a self-driving car? So each one of those is going to have a different understanding of what the state of the data actually needs to be. Now, the other side of this is governance and how data works for the organization really isn't going to happen unless the culture of the organization is able to understand and interpret the data. And again, only about 1 in 4 organizations is really communicating to train the organization on what their data governance responsibilities and best practices is. So when we come out and we say that data is an asset and it's owned by the business, well, those are nice things to say, but we're not necessarily interpreting that into how we operate with data and creating an understanding of what specific types of responsibilities have to be applied in order to own that data. So how do we start in solving these issues? It really comes down to intelligence. So just the same way that we are using data science and machine learning and insight-driven business practices to generate those connected intelligence experiences, we want to use that same type of artificial intelligence and apply that to the way that we manage and govern our data in systems. And we just want to be intelligent and proficient at doing that in general, so our practices will change too. So let's talk about what the 4 tenets of data governance are for digital, particularly. First of all, we have to obsessively collaborate. We need to become domain-centric. It's about context. We need to invest in the actual data experience, and we want to go ambient with our data governance capabilities. Let's unpack those 4 things. So what are we talking about when we talk about obsessive collaboration? Well, it points back to that 1 in 4 number that we talked about in terms of communicating roles and responsibilities around data and how you own the data and steward the data. And you really have to take a look at where subject matter expertise lies within the organization or where your customers or with your partners to better understand how you manage and govern and interpret your data. And so this is going to be federated for particular tasks and responsibilities to the most appropriate role and responsibility. And we have 4 different areas. When you're thinking about how does data align and enable processes and decisions, that's where ownership by the business really comes in. That's where data is contextualized. That's where, the business knows intuitively how data should be used, what types of questions are going to be asked, and how they are gathering insights to enable new types of tasks to automate or to extend new value. Now, from an analytics perspective, we have team members, analysts and data scientists who have been looking at the data, partnering with the business, recognizing what those questions are, and interpreting that into the language of queries and algorithms in order to get to these insights. But they're bringing the expertise to manage and govern data around preparing it appropriately to use various algorithms and build those models. They're validating that information against the hypotheses that the business has for the types of simulations and what if scenarios that they want to have. They're vetting the data because you can't always take care of the quality and the standards and definitions. It's not always adhering to policies, or policies have been applied, but they're obfuscating where the signals are that tell you about the business. So the analytics team is really applying their own subject matter expertise to how you work with data to generate insights from the signals that exist throughout your business. Data stewards, the core and central owner for data governance, is really the expert in data governance. They understand how to build the policies. They understand where these policies are being generated from. They're coordinating and collaborating with the line of business, the analytics team, the technical teams to ensure that the way that policies are created, shaped, or evolved are matching to the use cases that are necessary. And they're really the owners of how do you execute on the best practices for data, whether you have dedicated data stewards and custodians to improve upon and manage and govern that data appropriately to the policies, or whether you're driving, the enablement and processes and practices so that you have a center of excellence and best practices for your governance throughout your organization. And then lastly, we sometimes talk about the fact that IT says, the business owns the data, but let's wake up a little bit because they're part of this team too. They need to be able to understand and interpret the policies that are being created by the data stewards, how analytics teams are going to work with the data and how they expect the data to be pre-prepared and available to them. And they're also working to understand and interpret the requirements and the use cases of the line of business and how you adapt the data within that environment. So there's constant conversation, communication, collaboration to ensure that all 4 points of the data, from the business to the insight to the governance to the enablement, are all hooked together appropriately.